Hi everyone. It's good to see you all. So this pretty book. This is my third book. It just came out a month ago. My mother, when she saw it, she said, "Oh my God, Rossi, this is your prettiest book by far." And I said, "Thanks, Mom. It's the only one I didn't design the cover for." But it is pretty. So it's good to be here. Thank you for bringing me. It's been fun talking to the students and everything. And, being on this campus, I forget, like college, certain colleges are like a thing, but then just being in that hotel, and I'm like, oh, Notre Dame's a thing. It's very interesting. And you don't want to go up to someone who's like in the thing and be like, what's the deal with your thing? This Notre Dame thing. But I wonder. To the fig tree on 9th and Christian. This is a real fig tree on 9th Street and Christian in Philadelphia. Who knows Philadelphia? It's a real tree. Go there. Tumbling through the city in my mind without once looking up, the racket in the love work, probably rehearsing some stupid thing I said or did, some crime or other. The city, they say, is a lonely place until, yes, the sound of sweeping, and a woman, yes, with a broom, beneath which you are now too, the canopy of a fig. Its arms pulling the September sun to it, and she has a hose too, and so works hard, rinsing and scrubbing the walk, lest some poor sod slip on the silk of a fig and break his hip, and not probably reach over to gobble up the perpetrator. The light catches the veins in her hands when I ask about the tree. They flutter in the air, and she says, "Take as much as you can, help me." So I load my pockets and mouth, and she points to the step ladder against the wall to mean more, but I was without a sack. So my meager plunder would have to suffice, and an old woman whom gravity was pulling into the earth loosed one from a low-slung branch, and its eye wept like hers, which she dabbed with a kerchief as she cleaved the fig with what remained of her teeth. And soon there were 8 or 9 people gathered beneath the tree, looking into it like a constellation, pointing, "Do you see it?" And I am tall, and so good for these things. And a bald man even told me so. When I grabbed 3 or 4 for him, reaching into the giddy throngs of yellow jackets, sugar stone, which he only pointed to, smiling and rubbing his stomach. I mean, he was really rubbing his stomach, like there was a baby in there. It was hot. His head shone while he offered recipes to the group using words which I couldn't understand. And besides, I was a little tipsy on the dance of the velvety heart rolling in my mouth, pulling me down and down into the oldest countries of my body, where I ate my first fig from the hand of a man who escaped his country by swimming through the night, and maybe never said more than 5 words to me at once, but gave me figs. And a man on his way to work hops twice to reach at last his fig, which he smiles at and calls baby. "Come here, baby," he says, and blows a kiss to the tree, which everyone knows cannot grow this far north, being Mediterranean and favoring the rocky, sun-baked soils of Jordan and Sicily. But no one told the fig tree or the immigrants. There's a way the fig tree grows in groves. It wants, it seems, to hold us. Yes, I am anthropomorphizing, goddammit. I have twice in the last 30 seconds rubbed my sweaty forearm into someone else's sweaty shoulder, gleeful, eating out of each other's hands on Christian Street in Philadelphia, a city like most, which has murdered its own people. This is true. We are feeding each other from a tree at the corner of Christian and 9th. Strangers maybe never again. This is a poem called Feet. And there's like a thing you need to know. 2 things you need to know. There's a million things you need to know, but you probably know all but 2 of them. Power Man and Iron Fist, does anyone know what that is? Yes. Yes, Marvel superhero. So I was so thrilled. Luke Cage, there's a black superhero named Luke Cage, Power Man. And he joined up with a guy named Iron Fist, and they were Power Man and Iron Fist. They kicked a bunch of ass. So it was my favorite comic book. They appear in this poem, and the comic book does. The comic does. And then there was a show called The Real World. Is it still on? Yes. Is it? Yeah. Why? It's crazy. It's unreal. What are they doing now? Is it the people like who were on when I was 13? Now they're just coming back and they're like with their children and children's children. Wait, what's that? They're just, it's awful.
Terrible new people.
Oh wow. All right. I referenced that too. This is the 1994 version, I suppose, of The Real World. Feet. Friends, mine are ugly feet. The body's common wreckage stuffed into boots. The second toe on the left foot's crooked enough that when a child asks, "What's that?" of it, I can, without flinch or fear of doubt, lie that a cow stepped on it, which maybe makes them fear cows, for which I repent in love as I am with those philosophical beasts who would never smash my feet, nor sneer at them the way my mother does. "We always bought you good shoes, honey," she says. "You can't blame us for those things." And for this and other reasons, I have, when I read this poem and my mother's in the audience, she's like, "We got you zips and stuff." And for this and other reasons, I have never indulged in the pleasure of flip-flops, shy or ashamed, digging my toes like 10 tiny ostriches into the sand at the beach with friends who I'm not sure love me. Though I don't think Tina loved me. She liked me, I think, but said to me as we sat on lawn chairs beside a pool where I lifeguarded and was meticulous at obscuring from view with a book or towel my screwy friends, "You have pretty feet," in that gaudy cement mixer Levittown accent that sends all the lemurs scaling my ribcage to see, and she actually had pretty feet. And so I took this as a kindness incomparable and probably fell a little bit in love with her for that afternoon, with the weird white streak in her hair, and her machine gun chatter, and her gums snapping, and so slid my feet from beneath my Power Man and Iron Fist comic book into the sun, for which they acted like plants, opening their tiny mouths to the food hurtling to them through the solar system. And like plants, you could watch them almost smile, almost say thank you. You could watch them turn colors and be almost emboldened. None of which Tina saw because she was probably digging in her purse or talking about that hottie on The Real World, or yelling at some friend's little sister to put her ass in her trunks, or pouring the crumbs of her Fritos into her thrown open mouth. But do you really think I'm talking to you about my feet? Of course she's dead. Tina was her name, of leukemia. So I heard. Why else would I try sadly to make music of her unremarkable kindness? I'm trying, I think, to forgive myself for something I don't know what. But what I do know is that I love the moment when the poet says, "I'm trying to do this," or "I'm trying to do that." Sometimes it's a horseshit trick. But sometimes it's a way by which the poet says, "I wish I could tell you truly of the little factory in my head, the smokestacks chuffing, the dandelions and purslane and willows of sweet clover prying through the blacktop. I wish I could tell you how inside is the steady mumble and clank of machines. But mostly, I wish I could tell you of the footsteps I hear, more than I can ever count, all of whose gates I can discern by listening closely, which promptly disappear after being lodged again here where we started, in the factory where loss makes all things beautiful grow." So there's a lot of elegies in this poem, in this book. And there's a lot of gardens too. I'm a big gardener, I'm an orchardist. I work with the Bloomington Community Orchard. It's like the most important work I've probably ever done in my life. Just a group of people planted an orchard together. Free fruit for all, that's the logo, or that's the call. Dream, build, and share your orchard community, that's our mission. So a lot of these poems take place with trees and take place, and either with my own trees in my own garden, but also in this sort of bigger idea of community. But there's a lot of dying and a lot of regeneration, I'm noticing. This is called burial. This is what you need to know. Actually, I'm going to ask this question. I asked this question in Bloomington a couple days ago. Demographic is a little different in various ways. Has anyone here done anything interesting with their placenta? You did?
I smelled it in my person.
Okay. That's good. I've never done that. That's interesting. So, some people will do various things with it, like plant a tree with it because of the nutrients. So it's an automatic sort of source of nutrients, which industrial agriculture can kind of mine and do other stuff with. But there are these ways that, I talk about it in the poem, but now you know. When I was in Bloomington, I said, so who's done something interesting with their... I don't have to explain my poem to you. Okay. Burial. You're right. The fertilizer is good. It wasn't a gang of dullards came up with chucking a fish in the planting hole, or some midwife got lucky with the placenta. Oh, I'll plant a tree here. And a sudden flush of quince and jam enough for months. Yes, the magic dust our bodies become cast spells on the roots about which someone else could tell you the chemical processes, but it's just magic to me. Which is why a couple springs ago, when first putting in my 2 bare root plum trees out back, I took the jar which has become my father's house, and lonely for him, and hoping to coax him back from my mother as much as me, poured some of him in the planting holes. And he dove in, glad for the robust air, saddling a slight gust into my nose and mouth, chuckling as I coughed, but mostly he disappeared into the minor yawns in the earth into which I placed the trees, splaying wide their roots, casting the gray dust of my old man evenly throughout the hole, replacing then the clods of dense Indiana soil until the roots and my father were buried, watering it all in with one hand while holding the tree with the other straight as the flag to the nation of simple joy of which my father is now a naturalized citizen. Waving the flag from his subterranean lair, the roots curled around him like shawls or jungle gyms like hookahs or the arms of ancestors before breaststroking into the xylem, riding the elevator up through the cambium and into the leaves where, when you put your ear close enough, you can hear him whisper, "Good morning." Where, if you close your eyes and push your face, you can feel his stubbly jowls. And good Lord, this year he was giddy at the first real fruit set and nestled into the 30 or 40 plums in the 2 trees, peering out from the sweet meat with his hands pressed against the purple skin like cathedral glass. And imagine his joy as the sun wizarded forth those abundant sugars, and I plodded barefoot and prayerful at the first ripe plums swell and blush, almost weepy, conjuring some surely ponderous verse to convey this bottomless grace, oh Father kind of stuff. Hundreds of hot air balloons filling the sky in my chest, replacing his intubated body, listing like a boat keel side up, replacing the steady stream of water from the one eye, which his brother wiped before removing the tube, keeping his hand on the forehead until the last wind in his body wandered off, while my brother wailed like an animal, and my mother said, weeping, "It's okay, you can go, honey." At all of which my father guffawed by kicking from the first bite buckets of juice down my chin, staining one of my 2 button-down shirts, the salmon-colored silk one, hollering, "There's more of that!" almost dancing now on the plum in the tree, the way he did as a person, bent over and biting his lip and chucking the one hip out, then the other with his elbows cocked and fists loosely made and eyes closed and mouth made trumpet when he knew he could make you happy just by being a little silly and sweet. How are you? For whom is this a first poetry reading? Raise your hands high, please. That's okay. Okay. How are you doing?
Good.
You're hanging in there?
Yeah.
Good. It's good to stand up. Don't lock your knees. Good. Is everyone else who is a first poetry reading okay? I don't want to turn you off from poetry. God, what if you left and you were like, fuck poetry. Thanks to Broski. That would be a bummer. This is called To My Best Friend's Big Sister. I do get to tell you another thing. Who knew? Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. That's generational here. That's 1989-ish dance hip hop. I referenced a song called It Takes Two, which actually cites another song called, I think, It Takes Two. And then I reference Isaac Hayes. Who knows who Isaac Hayes is? Yeah. Who doesn't know who Isaac Hayes is? It's okay. Could someone explain to these poor but innocent people who Isaac Hayes is? Who's Isaac Hayes?
Chef, for starters.
What's that?
Chef.
Yeah, he did the music for Shaft. Yeah, look it up. You will be happy. You will be happy. Back in the day, you used to have to go to the library for that. Now you can look on your phone while someone's reading you a poem. To my best friend's big sister. One never knows, does one, how one comes to be standing most ways to naked in front of one's pal's big sister, who has, simply by telling me to, got me to shed all but the scantest flap of fabric and twirl before her like a rotisserie chicken. As she observes and offers thoughtful critique on my just pubescent body, which is not a thing to behold. What with my damp trunks clinging to my damp crotch, and proportion and grace are words the definition of which I don't yet know, nor did I ask the many-skirted scientist sitting open-legged and now shoeless on my mom's couch. Though it may have been just this morning while chucking papers I heard through the Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock pulsing my Walkman. Do you know what a Walkman is? Pulsing my Walkman, a mourning dove struggling, snared in the downspout's mouth. And without lowering the volume or missing a verse, I crinkled the rusted aluminum trap enough that with a little wriggle, it was free. And did not at once wobble to some power line, but sat on my hand and looked at me for at least one verse of It Takes Two, sort of bobbing its head and cooing once or twice before flopping off. But that seems very long ago now, as I pirouette my hairless and shivering warble of acne and pudge, burning a hole in the rug as Big Sis tosses off Greek and Latin words like pectorals and gluteus maximus, standing to show me what she means with her hands on my love handles. And now I can see myself trying to add some gaudy flourish to this memory, to make of it a fantasy, which is why I linger, hoping to misrecall the child me, make of me someone I wasn't. Make of this experience the beginning of a new life. Gilded doors kicked open, blaring trombones, full beard, Isaac Hayes singing in the background, and me thundering forth on the wild steed of emergent manhood. But I think this child was not that child, obscuring as he was his breasts by tucking his hands into his armpits. And having never even made love to himself yet, was not really a candidate for much, besides the chill of a minor shame that he would forget for 15 years. one of what would prove to be many such shames stitched together like a quilt with all its just legible patterning, which could be a thing heavy and warm to be buried in, or instead might be held up to the light where we see the threads barely holding, so human and frail, so beautiful and sad and small from this remove. Thank you. So I think I should probably read, I have one kind of longish poem that I want to read you. And so I'm going to read you two other poems, or one other poem before that. And then I'll read you this longish poem, and that'll be like long enough. It's called Ode to Sleeping in My Clothes. Who sleeps in their clothes? Sometimes. Yes, yeah. And though I don't mention it to my mother or the doctors with their white coats, it is in fact a great source of happiness for me, as I don't even remove my socks, and will sometimes even pull up my hood and slide my hands deep in my pockets, and probably more so than usual look as if something bad has happened, my heart blasting a last somersault, or some artery parting like curtains in a theater while the cavalry of blood comes charging through, except unlike so many of the dead, I must be smiling there in my denim and cotton sarcophagus, slightly rank from the day. It is said that Shostakovich slept with a packed suitcase beneath his bed. And it is said that black people were snatched from dark streets and made experiments of. And you and I both have family whose life savings are tucked 12 feet beneath the Norway maple, whose roots splay like the bones in the foot of a man who has walked to Youngstown, Ohio from Arkansas without sleeping or keeping his name. And it's a miracle, maybe I almost never think of, to rise like this, and simply by sliding my feet into my boots while the water for coffee gathers its song, be in the garden or on the stoop, running almost from nothing. So this last poem I'm going to read you is a little bit long, and I talk about the orchard in this poem, so I don't have to talk about that anymore. And besides that, that's all you need to know. It's good to have a prop. It's called Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. Friends, will you bear with me today, for I have awakened from a dream in which a robin made with its shabby wings a kind of veil, behind which it shimmied and stomped something from the south of Spain. Its wings made with a veil behind it, stomped something from the south of Spain, its breast aflare, looking me dead in the eye. From the branch that grew into my window, coochie-cooing my chin, the bird shuffling its little talons left, then right, while the leaves bristled against the plaster wall, two of them drifting onto my blanket, while the bird opened and closed its wings like a matador giving up on murder, jutting its beak, turning a circle and flashing again the ruddy bombast of its breast, by which I knew upon waking it was telling me in no uncertain terms to bellow forth the tubas and sousaphones, the whole rusty brass band of gratitude not quite dormant in my belly. It said so in a human voice. Bellow forth. And who among us could ignore such odd and precise counsel? Hear ye, I am here to holler that I have hauled tons, by which I don't mean lots, I mean tons of cow shit, and stood ankle deep in swales of maggots swirling the spent beer grains the brewery man was good enough to dump off, holding his nose, for they smell very bad, but make the compost ride giddy and lick its lips, twirling dung with my pitchfork again and again with hundreds and hundreds of other people. We dreamt an orchard this way, furrowing our brows and hauling our wheelbarrows and sweating through our shirts. And less than a year later, there was a party at which trees were sunk into the well-fed earth, one of which, a Liberty apple, after being watered in, was tamped by a baby barefoot with a bow hanging in her hair, biting her lip in her joyous work. And friends, this is the realest place I know. It makes me squirm like a worm. I'm so grateful you could ride your bike there, or roller skate, or catch the bus. There's a fence and a gate twisted by hand. There is a fig tree taller than you in Indiana. It will make you gasp. It might make you want to stay alive even. Thank you. And thank you for not taking my pal when the engine of his mind dragged him to swig fistfuls of Xanax and a bottle or two of booze. And thank you for taking my father a few years after his own father went down. Thank you, Mercy. Mercy, thank you for not smoking meth with your mother. Oh, thank you. Thank you for leaving and for coming back. And thank you for what inside my friend's love bursts like a throng of roadside goldenrod gleaming into the world, likely hauling a shovel with her like one named Aralee Ott, with hands big as a horse's, and who, like one named Aralee Ott, will laugh time to time till the juice runs from her nose. Oh, thank you for the way a small thing's wail makes the milk, or what once was milk, in us gather into horses huckle-buckling across a field. And thank you, friends, when last spring the hyacinth bells rang and the crocuses flaunted their upturned skirts and a quiet roved the beehive, which when I entered were snugged 2 or 3 dead fist-sized clutches of bees between the frames, almost clinging to one another, this one's tiny head pushed into another's tiny wing, one's forelegs resting on another's face, the translucent paper of their wings fluttering beneath my breath, and when a few dropped to the frames beneath, honey. And after falling down to cry, everything's glacial shine. And thank you, too. And thanks for the corduroy couch I have put you on. Put your feet up. Here's a light blanket, dear one, for I think this is going to be long. I can't stop my gratitude, which includes, dear reader, you, for staying here with me, for moving your lips just so as I speak. Here is a cup of tea. I've spooned honey into it. And thank you, the tiny bee's shadow, perusing these words as I write them. And the way my love talks quietly when in the hive, so quietly, in fact, you cannot hear her, but only notice barely her lips moving in conversation. Thank you, what does not scare her in me, but makes her reach my way. Thank you, the love she is, which hurts sometimes, and the time she misremembered elephants in one of my poems, which, oh, here they come. Garlanded with morning glory and wisteria blooms, trombones all the way down to the river. Thank you, the quiet in which the river bends around the elephant's solemn trunk, polishing stones, floating on its gentle back, the flock of geese flying overhead. And to the quick and gentle flocking of men, to the old lady falling down on the corner of Fairmount and 18th, holding patiently with the softest parts of their hands her cane and purple hat, gathering for her the contents of her purse and touching her shoulder and elbow. Thank you, too, the cockeyed court on which, in a half-court 3-on-3, we old heads made of some runny-nosed kids a shambles. And the 61-year-old, after flipping a reverse layup off a backdoor cut from my no-look pass to seal the game, ripped off his shirt and threw punches at the gods and hollered at the kids to admire the pacemaker's scar graining across his chest. Thank you, the glad accordion's wheeze in the chest. Thank you, the bagpipes. Thank you to the woman barefoot in a gaudy dress for stopping her car in the middle of the road and the tractor trailer behind her and the van behind it, whisking a turtle off the road. Thank you, God of Garden. Thank you, paisley panties. Thank you, the organ up my dress. Thank you, the sheer dress you wore, kneeling in my dream at the creek's edge and the light swimming through it. The koi kissing halos into the glassy air. The room in my mind with the blinds drawn where we nearly injure each other, crawling into the shawl of the other's body. Thank you, when I say it plain, fuck each other dumb. And you, again, you, for the true kindness it has been for you to remain awake with me like this, nodding time to time, and making that noise which I take to mean, yes, or I understand, or please go on, but not too long, or why are you spitting so much, or easy, tiger, hands to yourself. I am excitable. I am sorry. I am grateful. I just want us to be friends now, forever. Take this bowl of blackberries from the garden. The sun has made them warm. I picked them just for you. I promise I will try to stay on my side of the couch. And thank you, the baggie of dreadlocks I found in a drawer while washing and folding the clothes of our murdered friend. The photo in which his arms slung around the sign to the trail of silences. Thank you, the way before he died, he held his hands open to us. For coming back in a waft of incense or in the shape of a boy in another city looking from between his mother's legs. Or disappearing into the stacks after brushing by. For moseying back in dreams where, seeing us lost and scared, he put his hand on our shoulders and pointed us to the temple across town. And thank you to the man all night long hosing a mist on his early bloomed peach tree so that the hard frost not waste the crop. The ice in his beard and the ghosts lifting from him when the warming sun told him sleep now. Thank you, the ancestor who loved you before she knew you by smuggling seeds into her braid for the long journey. Who loved you before he knew you by putting a walnut tree in the ground. Who loved you before she knew you by not slaughtering the land. Thank you, who did not bulldoze the ancient grove of dates and olives. Who sailed his keys into the ocean and walked softly home. Who did not fire. Who did not plunge the head into the toilet. Who said, stop, don't do that. Who lifted some broken someone up. Who volunteered the way a plant birthed of the reseeding plant is called a volunteer. Like the plum tree that marched beside the raised bed in my garden. Like the arugula that marched itself between the blueberries. Nary a bayonet. Nary an army. Nary a nation. Which usage of the word volunteer, familiar to gardeners the wide world, made my pal shout, oh, and dance and plunge his knuckles into the lush soil before gobbling 2 strawberries and digging a song from his guitar made of wood from a tree someone planted. Thank you. Thank you, Zinnia and Gooseberry, Rebecca and Paw Paw, Ashmead's Kernel, Coxcomb and Scarlet Runner, Feverfew and Lemon Balm. Thank you, Knitbone and Sweetgrass and Sunchoke and False Indigo, whose petals stammered apart by bumblebees. Good Lord, please give me a minute. And Moonglow and Catkin and Crookneck and Painted Tongue and Seed Pod and Johnny Jump Up. Thank you, what in us rackets glad, what glad rackets us. And thank you to this knuckle-headed heart, this pelican heart, this gap-toothed heart flinging open its gaudy maw to the sky. Oh clumsy, oh bumblefucked, oh giddy, oh dumbstruck, oh rickshaw, oh goat, twisting its head at me from my peach tree's highest branch, balanced impossibly, gobbling the last fruit, its tongue working like an engine, a lone sweet drop tumbling by some miracle into my mouth like the smell of someone I've loved. Heart like an elephant screaming at the bones of its dead. Heart like the lady on the bus dressed head to toe in gold, the sun shivering her shiny boots, singing Erykah Badu to herself, leaning her head against the window. And thank you, the way my father one time came back in a dream by plucking the 2 cables beneath my chin like a bass fiddle strings and played me until I woke singing. No kidding, I was singing and smiling. Thank you Thank you, stumbling into the garden where the June berries' flowers had burst open like the bells of French horns. The lily my mother and I planted oozed into the air. The bazillion ants labored in their earthen workshops below. The collard greens waved in the wind like the sails of ships, and the wasps swam in the mint bloom's viscous swill. And you, again you, dear friend, thank you for hanging tight. I know I can be long-winded sometimes. I want so badly to rub the sponge of gratitude over every last thing, including you, which, yes, it's awkward. The suds in your ear and armpit, the little sparkling gems slipping into your eye. Soon it will be over, which is precisely what the child in my dream said, holding my hand, pointed at the roiling sea and the sky, hurtling our way like so many buffalo, who said, "It's much worse than we think, and sooner." To whom I said, "No duh, child in my dreams. What do you think this singing and shuddering is? What this screaming and reaching and dancing and crying is, other than loving what every second goes away? Goodbye, I mean to say. And thank you every day." Thank you.